Okay, we are going to do Teacher Talk 30. I encourage you on set 1 to pause your video and try questions 1 through 4, and then play the video and check your answers. So I'll give you a second to pause the video and try it on your own. All right, this first one, whenever we do not have an operation in the middle of our variables, we assume that that is multiplication. So I'm going to put a dot there to represent our multiplication. According to our exponent rules, whenever we're multiplying, we add our exponents. So our exponents are 7 and 3 here. So whenever we add those together, our simplified answer becomes x to the power of 10. Okay. Question 2. When we have parentheses, we are going to use the power rule. Now, when we have a coefficient in front of our variable, it's very important to remember that there is a 1 exponent on that coefficient. This 2 exponent on the outside of our parentheses is what we have to distribute to all exponents inside of the parentheses. And when we do that, we're going to multiply them. So this becomes 5 to the power of 2 times 1 and x to the power of 4 times 2. Now if I simplify that further, this becomes 5 to the power of 2 and then x to the power of 8. Now I can go one step further and simplify 5 to the power of 2 gets me 25, and x to the power of 8 I can't simplify any further. So this is our completely simplified answer. All right, question 3. Here we are dividing with our fraction. When we're dividing, we're using the quotient rule, which tells us that we need to subtract our exponents. So we would take 6 minus 4 and get the simplified version of x to the power of 2. Okay. Last one here is also using the quotient rule. So this time we're subtracting 4 minus 6 to get us x to the power of negative 2. Okay, and remember, we never want to end with any negative exponents. We can simplify that further. So whenever we have a negative exponent, in order to make it positive, we need to find the reciprocal. The reciprocal of x to the power of negative 2 is 1 over x to the power of 2. And since we've flipped that and found the reciprocal, we now have a positive exponent. 1 over x to the power of 2 is our simplified answer. Check your answers and make sure they are the same. All right, set 2, we're getting a little bit more added into our expressions, and we're going to simplify using multiple rules. So for this one, we have coefficients 3 and 27. And I know that 3 goes into both of those numbers. So if I simplify those, I'm going to divide each of those by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. And notice where I'm putting that 1. It's still staying on the top of my fraction. Whoops. Because that's where the 3 is placed. Okay, 27 divided by 3 gives me 9. And I'm putting that on the bottom because that's where my 27 is. Okay, the next pair I can simplify are my x's. So I have x to the power of 5 and x to the power of 3. Now since we are dividing, we're using the quotient rule here. 5 minus 3 would give me x to the power of 2. Since that was a positive exponent after subtracting, I left it on the top. If it were a negative, I would put it on the bottom in the denominator of my fraction and make it positive. Okay, last pair I can simplify are my y's. So I have y to the power of 8, y to the power of 4. Using the quotient rule, I know I have to subtract. That gives me y to the power of 4. And since it was positive, after subtracting, I left it on the top. Okay, so this would be my final answer. You could also rewrite this as x to the power of 2, y to the power of 4 over 9. The 1 there is not needed. Okay. Next one, this one looks very intimidating, but remember, if you have a 0 on the outside of your parentheses, that is taking the power of 0 of everything within the parentheses. And we know that anything to the power of 0 is 1. So that answer is just 1. Okay. Alrighty, here we have some parentheses, and we have an exponent on the outside of our parentheses. Now, whenever we are doing exponents, we do want to make sure we're still following PEMDAS. Okay, so PEMDAS starts with a P, so it's meaning that we need to do our parentheses first. Now I'm looking inside my parentheses and I'm seeing that I have 2 X's. So I want to simplify those together with the product rule first, and then I will distribute my 2 on the outside of my parentheses. So I know that if I don't have an exponent, I know there's an imaginary 1 there. So this can be rewritten as x to the power of 8, y to the power of 4. Okay, remembering that I'm using the product rule, adding my 7 and 1 exponents together. Okay, now I'm going to use my power rule and distribute this 2 to all of my exponents within my parentheses. And when I do this, I get x to the power of 16, y to the power of 8. Okay, from there, I cannot simplify that any further, so that is my simplified answer. Okay, next one. We do have some division here. So I'm going to start with my coefficients in the front, 6 and 12. I know that 6 goes into both of those, so I'm going to divide both by 6. 6 divided by 6 gives me 1 on the top, and 12 divided by 6 gives me 2 on the bottom. All right, next thing I have is my x. There isn't another x to combine with, so I'm just leaving it as x to the power of 3 on the top because it's positive. And then the next thing I have is y to the power of 0. Remember, anything to the power of 0 is just 1, so we have another multiplying by 1 there on the top. Okay, so if we were to rewrite that to make it a little bit prettier, we would just have x to the power of 3 on the top and 2 on the bottom. Because remember, when you're multiplying by 1, it doesn't change the value. All right, and that is it for set 2. Moving along to the last set here. In set 3, we are evaluating and comparing the following. Notice here the difference between the first 2. Here are the parentheses, and then this one doesn't have parentheses. This one has parentheses. The next one does not. Okay, so the important thing to remember here is that whenever you have parentheses, that is taking -2 times -2 within the parentheses like that. Now, when I have a negative times a negative, I know that that is going to come out as a positive. Okay, so my answer there would be +4. Now, the difference between that and the next one is that this negative sign is just kind of out in the front, and then this is 2 times 2, which 2 times 2 gives us 4, and then we have to tack that negative in the front, so that would give us a -4. Okay, so very important difference there when you're using parentheses. One is going to be positive. When you have parentheses, you're multiplying a negative times a negative. The next one is there's just that negative lingering out in the front. Okay, let's try this again. So this one, we're going to the power of 3 this time, so we're multiplying -2 times -2 times -2 3 times. Now we know that, let me use a different color, -2 times -2 gives us +4. Then we need to multiply that by one more -2, which would actually give us -8. Okay, so this is going to be -8. Now the reason that this is still negative is because we have a odd exponent. Okay, so when we had a even exponent, we were multiplying a negative times a negative, which canceled out and gave us a positive. Here we have one extra negative, which keeps our answer as a negative. Okay, so when you have an odd exponent and you're your base is negative, your answer is also going to be negative. Okay? Then this next one, remember that negative kind of just lingers out in the front. And then we have 2 times 2 times 2, 3 times. We know 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, and then we just put that negative out in the front. Okay, so both of those answers are going to be -8. And that is it for Teacher Talk 30. You are welcome to ask any questions you may have to your teacher, and otherwise you can start your Math Excel practice and then quiz after you have completed that.